The Bayou Star Diner smelled of stale coffee and regret, amplified by the 3 a.m. Louisiana humidity. Rain slicked the windows, blurring the neon sign into a hazy red promise that never delivered. Behind the counter, Ria Navarro wiped down the formica, her movements economical and silent. She was a ghost in a blue-collared uniform, the kind of woman customers looked through, not at, which was exactly how she liked it. Her shift was a study of hands, not faces. Faces lied, hands told the truth. She watched a trucker's grease-caked fingers drum impatiently, a jittery student's knuckles pale from clutching a phone, a salesman's fleshy palm sweating as he lied to someone on the other end of a call. Ria's gaze was constant but never settled. She saw the twitch before the anger, the tremor before the fear. She saw everything. Headlights cut through the drizzle, too bright, too numerous. A convoy of 3 black armor-plated SUVs slid to the curb, their engines a low, expensive growl that vibrated through the diner's floor. They parked like a declaration of war. The diner's few remaining patrons froze, spoons halfway to mouths. The passenger door of the lead vehicle, a custom Maybach that cost more than the entire city block, opened. A bodyguard stepped out, a mountain in a bespoke suit, scanning the street before opening the rear door. Cassian Ray emerged. He was not a man who walked into a room. He was a man who conquered it. Even in the diner's poor lighting, his presence was absolute. Tech billionaire on paper, dawn of the Gulf's entire underground infrastructure in reality. He moved with a predator's grace, flanked by 2 more bodyguards who parted the air before him. He did not look at the menu. He did not look at the other customers. He slid into the booth by the window, his gaze fixed on the rainy street outside. Ria picked up a pot of coffee. "He looks like a man who drinks it black," muttered Sal, the cook, from the grill. Ria said nothing. She walked over, pot in hand, but her attention was not on the man. It was on the car. Through the rain-streaked glass, she saw the Maybach idling, and she heard it. A sound beneath the sound, a faint, metallic click, 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 utterly out of rhythm with the patter of the rain and the thrum of the engine. It was a relay, fractional and tight. Her eyes snapped to the dashboard. The check engine light was on, but it was wrong. It was not steady, nor was it a standard, rhythmic pulse. It was blinking off rhythm, a nervous, erratic flash, a Morse code of panic. Primer. Secondary power source. Her blood went cold, but her body was already moving. Pure muscle memory from a life she had buried 6 feet deep. She reached the booth. The bodyguards tensed, one hand moving inside his jacket. Cassian Ray did not even look at her. "Coffee," he murmured, his voice a low baritone, still watching the street. Ria ignored the pot in her hand. Her voice was low, flat, and absolute, cutting through the diner's ambiance. "Get out of the chair," she said. "Your car is counting." That got his attention. Cassian Ray turned his head slowly. His eyes, the color of storm-dark water, met hers. There was no fear, just a flicker of amusement, a fractional, insulting half-smirk touched his lips, a man assessing a particularly bold insect. "I beg your pardon? There is a bomb under your seat. You have seconds. Move now." The bodyguard closest to her moved first, a blur of trained reaction. His arm shot out, not to protect his boss, but to intercept her. "Ma'am, step back." Ria did not have time to step back. She did not have time to explain. The bodyguard's hand closed on her arm, hard. It was a mistake. She pivoted on the ball of her foot, using his own grip for leverage. She dropped her center of gravity, snapped her elbow back into his floating rib, a sharp, precise strike, and spun under his arm as he grunted in surprise. Before the second guard could even react, she was on her knees, diving headfirst into the footwell under the driver's seat of the parked Maybach. The door was still open. The interior smelled of rich leather and ozone. She shoved her arm deep beneath the driver's seat. Her fingers met not steel, but a plastic casing, smooth and alien. It was warm. She felt the vibration. Tuck, Tuck, tuck. It was attached to the seat's pressure sensors, a machine learning timer. It had studied his weight, his posture. It was designed to kill him, and only him. A dim LED, coated in dust, pulsed with the ticking. A titanium bobby pin was out of her hair and in her hand. She jammed it into the casing, feeling for the auxiliary power line. Her fingers brushed the wire. "What is she doing?" Cassian's voice, sharp and cold, from the diner door, when he was standing now. "She's..." the bodyguard choked. "She's under the car!" Ria's fingers found the wire, but it was too clean. No simple disconnect. The tick-tick-tick sped up, a fail-safe. It was switching to its internal backup circuit. Damn it! She needed leverage. She needed a conductor. Her hand fumbled, patting the diner floor mat. Her fingers closed around something small, metal, and discarded. A single greasy teaspoon. She wedged the spoon against the main contact and used the bobby pin to rip the auxiliary battery wire free. The ticking accelerated. A frantic heartbeat rushing toward its end. The backup circuit was faster. She had maybe 30 seconds. She scrambled out from under the car, covered in grime. Cassian was on the sidewalk, his guards forming a V around him. "You triggered the backup," a guard yelled, his gun now drawn and pointed at the street. "It's on the pressure sensor," Ria yelled, pushing past him. She grabbed the front of Cassian's $1,000 shirt, balling the fabric in her fist. He was solid muscle and disbelief. "It's locked to your weight. You have to move. Shift your weight off the kill point." He stared at her, his eyes narrowed. The timer inside the car was a frantic, screaming insect. She did not wait for permission. She shoved him, hard, against the brick wall of the diner. "Move, break the algorithm." Cassian stumbled, his balance broken. He braced himself against the wall. And from inside the Maybach, the ticking stopped. The silence that fell was absolute. It was heavier than the rain, thicker than the humidity. It was the sound of 19 seconds that had decided not to pass. 19 seconds, frozen on a dim LED display, just before zero. Ria let go of his shirt, her hand trembling slightly. She smoothed the fabric, a purely automatic gesture. Cassian Ray stared at her. The amusement was gone. The skepticism was gone. He looked at her as if he was seeing her for the first time, a problem he could not quantify. His voice was quiet, but it carried over the distant wail of approaching sirens. "Who are you?" Ria Navarro took a shaky breath, the smell of ozone and burnt coffee filling her lungs. She wiped her greasy hands on her apron. "Just the person who pours the coffee." Far off, the sirens were for a fire truck, a false alarm. Maybe, but closer, much closer, a motorcycle engine gunned, a rider, all in black, sped past the diner and tossed a small, weighted package onto the rain-slicked sidewalk. It landed with a soft thud. Ria's eyes caught the symbol on the package before it was still a stylized hawk, wings spread, the mark of the Clockwork Saints, cartel mechanics, bomb makers for hire. Cassian saw her look. He looked at the package, then back at her. The calculation in his eyes was instant. "You need to leave New Orleans," he said. It was not a suggestion. "My car. Tonight, we have a private conversation to finish." Ria shook her head, stepping back toward the diner's relative safety. "I'm not going anywhere with you. I just finished my shift." "I do not think you understand the position you are in." As if on cue, a bright flash lit the street. Not a siren, not lightning. A camera, across the street, a window. Someone had been recording. Someone had just captured her face, illuminated in the flash, standing next to the most powerful and most targeted man in the Gulf. She was no longer a ghost. The digital wildfire started before the Maybach's engine was cold. By 4 a.m., Dawn's chair bomb was trending in every New Orleans rideshare forum. By 5, blurry TikTok videos, stabilized and zoomed, showed Ria's face, captured in that single, damning flash. The internet gave her a name, Bayou Angel. By 6, the Federal Risk and Analysis Syndicate for Tainted Commerce, Frast, had taken an interest, a machine, built to sniff out corporate fraud, had just flagged an anomalous event intersecting with a high-value asset, and it began, slowly, to open its digital files on local traffic. Miles away, in a sterile penthouse that floated above the city's grime, Cassian Ray watched the same blurry video on a wall-sized screen. His security chief was pale. The bomb components, retrieved by his private team, were laid out on a steel table. "It was an inside job, obviously," Cassian said, his voice quiet. He picked up a piece of the 3D printed casing. "This sophistication belongs to the Saints, but the access—" His eyes narrowed. "This stinks of the Sable Union. They are angry about the LNG port. They think blocking the deal gives them leverage. This," he gestured to the bomb parts, "is bad leverage. Find out who in my organization gave them the key." Ria Navarro did not go home immediately. She took 3 different streetcars, switching lines at random, walking 6 blocks backward in the French Quarter before finally cutting through an alley into the Bywater. Her apartment was a second-floor walk-up above a shuttered voodoo shop. The air was thick with the smell of jasmine and river mold. She stopped at her door. Her key was in her hand, but she did not use it. She looked at the lock, a fresh, microscopic scratch near the keyhole, new metal gleaming under the weak hallway bulb. Someone had been there. Someone skilled, but not skilled enough. She unlocked the door, pushed it open, but did not enter. She waited. She listened to the building breathe, to the drip of the faulty gutter, to the scrape of a chair from the apartment next door. Silence. She reached into her hair, pulled a single, long black strand, and carefully taped it across the bottom corner of the door jamb before she stepped inside. A tripwire for ghosts. In a brightly lit cubicle in Houston, a young engineer at Rayworks, Cassian's legitimate tech empire, was sweating. His manager stood over him, tapping a pen. "It is just a patch. Kid, a VIP preference update. They want the seat diagnostics to sync with the new guest profiles. Just push the code." The engineer's fingers trembled. He knew this code. It created a vulnerability, a tiny, open window in the car's internal network. He hit enter. The code went live. On the internal memo, the request for the update was signed off by a third-party contractor, Axiom Halo, the security firm Cassian paid handsomely to protect him, a friend paid to act like a foe. Back in her apartment, Ria towed a loose floorboard under her threadbare rug. Beneath it was a small, tin box. It was not full of money. It contained relics of a life that had no file, a few inert, copper-cased detonator wires, a scratched lithium fluoride time proportion dial, and a small, heavy coin stamped with a symbol she never looked at. She touched the cold metal of the dial, her fingers tracing the etched numbers, a past she could not outrun, now sitting on her doorstep. She moved to the window. Across the street, a man sat in the shadows of a closed bar, reading a newspaper that was too dark to read. Ria watched him not directly, but watched his reflection in the bar's window. He was clumsy, shifting his weight, trying to appear casual. A dark sedan was parked nearby. When a streetcar passed, its lights flashed across the car's rear. Ria used the bar's window again, the angle of the glass catching the reflection of the license plate. She memorized the number, then watched the man for another 10 minutes before he was replaced by another. Equally clumsy, Shadow. She already knew what she would find. A quick search on a burner phone confirmed it. The car was a short-term rental leased to a shell corporation, Bayou Data Trust. The next night, the diner was quiet. The mood still hung over from the incident. Sal was jumpy. Every time the bell jingled, he flinched. At 10 p.m., it jingled again. Cassian Ray walked in, alone. He wore a simple black shirt, no jacket, no visible guards, but the diner still felt crowded. He slid into the same booth. Ria approached, coffee pot in hand. "They are watching us," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I know. Bayou Data Trust. They are amateurs, but their employers are not." He looked at her. I will have the coffee tonight. Black. She poured. Her hand was steady. Before you drink, Rhea said, I have a request. Tell your men outside to power down all electronics, phones, smartwatches, earbuds, everything, a 10-meter radius. Now. Cassian's eyes held hers. He saw no fear, no negotiation. It was a command. He raised one eyebrow. You think I'm here to be harmed? I think you do not understand what happened. The bomb was not just a bomb, it was a message, and you still have not read it. He stared at her for a long, heavy second, and then he tapped his watch. A single, silent command. Outside. His hidden security detail went dark. Rhea took a clean paper napkin from the dispenser. She pulled the titanium bobby pin from her hair. Using the pin like a pen, she began to draw, her lines sharp and precise, pressing creases into the soft paper. She drew the seat, the pressure plate, the dual-circuit timer. They did not just put a bomb in your car, she said, her voice low. They put data in your car. This pressure plate was not static. It was using a machine learning algorithm. It learned how you sit, the exact distribution of your weight, the way you shift when you check your mirror. It was designed so only you could trigger it. That data did not come from the street. It came from inside your car, from inside your company. You have an internal, high-level trader. Cassian looked at the intricate, terrifyingly accurate drawing on the napkin. He looked at the bobby pin in her hand. He looked at her face. I am offering you a job, he said, pushing the napkin aside. Temporary consultant. You find the person who put this in my car. You will be compensated beyond reason. I do not want your money. I want the cameras to stop. I can do better than that. He leaned forward. Work for me, and you get the protection of the Gray-White Institute. They are lawyers. They make files disappear. They will make you disappear from every camera, every database, every TikTok feed. They will erase the Bayou Angel. You go back to being a ghost. Rhea looked at the drawing, at the proof of her own haunted past, a way out, a way back to the shadows. I have one condition, she said, meeting his gaze. Name it. This is not just about you. This is about data. The engineer who was forced to write that code, the driver who might be next. If I do this, I have full authority. Any decision that involves the lives of the staff, the workers, the people they do not see, I make the call, not you. Cassian Ray smiled. It was not a warm expression. It was the smile of a king recognizing another monarch. He nodded once. Agreed. He stood up, leaving the coffee untouched. He placed $100 bill on the table. As he passed her, he paused, his shoulder almost brushing hers. His voice was so quiet, only she could hear it. But make no mistake, Rhea, from now on, you are in my story. He did not take her to a high-tech lab. He took her to where the city bled into the swamp, an abandoned boatyard off the industrial canal, a place where skeletons of shrimp boats rusted in the brackish water. The air was thick with diesel fumes, damp wood, and the iron tang of decay. Inside a vast corrugated iron shed, his technical team had already recreated the scene. It was not the Maybach, but the seat. It was mounted on a steel platform, wired to a dozen monitors, a clear gel torso, weighted to match Cassian's exact specifications, was suspended by a crane. They've been running simulations, Cassian said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. They cannot replicate the 19-second stop. Rhea walked past the team of engineers, ignoring their stares. She looked at the schematic on a large screen, then at the physical seat. She touched the leather, her fingers tracing the seams. You are testing for weight. You are wrong. She walked to the main console. Where is the feed from the car's interior cameras? A technician looked confused. Sir, the comfort cam, it just monitors for occupant wellness. Get the feed, Rhea commanded. When the footage appeared, it was mundane. Hours of Cassian in his car, talking on the phone, looking out the window. Rhea watched for 10 minutes. There, she pointed. Freeze it. Now, go back 5 seconds. She pointed to Cassian's posture. He was leaning slightly to the left, his head turned as he spoke to someone on his headset. And now, play the footage from the diner, just before I got in the car. They played it, Cassian in the diner booth, posture relaxed, looking out the window. The bomb was not just reading weight, Rhea explained, her voice sharp. It was reading shape. It was an offline AI, cross-referencing the pressure sensors with the interior camera. It was learning your posture. It would only arm if the occupant's shape was a 92% match, or higher, to you. She pointed back to the booth footage. You were not sitting like you in that booth. You were relaxed, different posture. It reset the algorithm's base parameters. When you got back in the car, you would have sat like you again. Boom. Cassian stared at the screen, his expression hardening into granite. It learned me. It had to be taught, Rhea corrected. Pull the board. The lead technician had already bagged the original circuit board. Rhea held it under a magnified light. There. A faint, oily smudge on the edge of a chip, a partial fingerprint. Within an hour, the print was run. It did not belong to a known criminal. It belonged to a technician at a high-end 3D printing lab in Houston, a lab whose primary benefactor was a quiet tech charity called the Caldera 9 Fund, a known financial artery for the Sable Union. The rain had started again, a soft, relentless drizzle that was more mist than water. They stood on the rotting pier outside the shed, the canal water slapping against the pylons. The city felt distant. From a far-off bar, the mournful sound of a single saxophone drifted across the water, a classic, bluesy jazz riff that hung in the humid air. The Sable Union, Cassian said, more to himself than to her. They think this makes me weak. He looked out at the dark water. I am not just a Dawn, Rhea. I am the only streetlight still working on this block. I keep the infrastructure running so the hospitals have power, so the ports move cargo. They think they can just turn me off. Rhea watched the water, her arms crossed against the damp chill. Streetlights fall when the wiring rots, she said quietly. He turned to look at her. The half-light from the shed cast one side of his face in shadow, the other in sharp relief. Is that what you are? A wiring inspector? I am someone who knows how things are built and how they come apart. He was standing closer now. The air between them was charged, smelling of engine oil and the river. His gaze dropped from her eyes to her mouth, then back. She did not move. You have a scar, she said, her voice soft. It was almost an accusation. She lifted a hand, her fingers tracing the faint, silvery line that ran from just behind his ear into his hairline. It was a movement of pure, analytical curiosity, but it felt like a brand. His breath hitched, almost imperceptibly. Caracas, he said, his voice rough, a negotiation that went poorly. He did not move, did not pull away from her touch. He watched her face, his eyes trying to solve the puzzle of her. You almost died, she whispered. It was not a question. She could feel the story of it in the raised flesh. I did, he said, for about 3 minutes. Her fingers lingered for a second too long. The jazz music seemed to swell, filling the silence. He leaned in, slowly, testing the air. She did not retreat. When his lips met hers, it was tentative. It was not the kiss of a dawn, all possession and fire. It was a question. It was the hesitant touch of two metals testing a current. It was rain damp and tasted of salt. She allowed it. She felt the shields inside her crack, just a little. She leaned into the simple human warmth. The kiss deepened. It became a search, a discovery, a slow burn against the cold night. His hand, large and warm, moved from her elbow to her back, resting on the small of it, drawing her fractionally closer. Rhea tensed. It was instant, a reflexive tightening of muscle, a memory of traps and restraints. Cassian felt it immediately. He stopped. He did not pull away, but the pressure of the kiss eased. His hand on her back stilled. He kept his forehead pressed against hers, their lips still brushing. May I? He whispered, the sound of vibration against her skin. He was asking for permission, not to continue, but permission to simply be there, to hold her. A long, shuddering breath escaped her. She gave a single, tiny nod, almost imperceptible. His hand did not move to possess, it simply stayed, a solid, warm presence on her back, a point of anchor in the storm. After a moment, Rhea stepped back, just half a step, breaking the physical contact. The air rushed in, cold and damp, to fill the space where he had been. Her eyes were dark, glistening with the mist. "Do not get confused," she said, her voice regaining its flat, steady tone, though her pulse was hammering in her throat. "I am not on your side. I am on the side of the problem. I can still leave you in the storm." Cassian looked at her, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were alive, burning with an intensity she had not seen before. He gave a short, rough laugh. "Then let me come with the storm." His phone vibrated in his pocket, a harsh, electronic buzz that shattered the moment. He pulled it out, his face illuminated by the screen. His expression changed, the brief warmth vanishing, replaced by the granite of the dawn. "Motu," he said. "The Metropolitan Operations and Tactics Unit, the city's digital eyes." He read the message. "They found it. Someone is auctioning driver behavior data on the dark market. Posture, reaction times, weight distribution, our bomb." Rhea finished the thought, her own blood running cold again. Was not an assassination. It was a proof of concept, a sales demo. She looked back at the city lights, blurred by the rain. "They are not trying to kill one, Dawn. Cassian, they are building a system to control them all." The Axiom Halo warehouse in Kenner was not just near the water, it was functionally in it. The 2 a.m. high tide brought the thick, brackish water of the Mississippi swell lapping at the corrugated steel of the loading bay doors. The air smelled of salt, rust, and dead things. Rhea moved through the shadows, a ghost in black tactical gear. Cassian was not with her, this was her operation. But Owen Pike, the auto engineer, was, his fingers nervously drumming on a tablet. Bishop, the hacker, was a voice in her ear, patched in from a coffee shop 3 states away. "You are clean," Bishop's voice crackled. "No motion sensors, but the building is on a live network. They are watching their own security feed." Rhea found the main junction box. "Good." She did not try to bypass the signal. She opened a small pouch and removed a roll of fine, adhesive copper mesh. "Owen, the router." Owen pointed to a blinking box on the ceiling. Rhea carefully applied the mesh, creating a tight seal around the unit. "A Faraday cage," she murmured. "We are not blocking the signal, we are trapping it. They will still be watching the feed, but it is now a 30-second loop of an empty warehouse. We are invisible." Inside, the warehouse was a gallery of high-end, violated automobiles, and in the back, a workbench. On it sat another bomb-rigged seat, this one more advanced. "They have been busy," Owen whispered, his eyes wide. Rhea ran her hands over the stitching, her touch analytical. She produced a small, razor-sharp blade and made a precise incision in the rich leather. She did not bother with the wiring underneath. She plunged her hand directly into the memory foam. Her fingers brushed something flat and hard. She pulled it out, a wafer-thin, black square. "A supercapacitor," she said, her voice tight with a dark, professional respect. "The backup circuit is not a wire. The entire foam cushion is the conductor. It is designed to detonate if the primary power is cut." She pointed to a microscopic etching on the casing. The stylized hawk. The Clockwork Saints. Their work is unmistakable. Owen was already connecting his tablet to a laptop on the workbench. "I am in their calendar. They are not just building, they are selling." He pointed to the screen. "A private summit at a hotel in Austin. Future-proofing executive safety. Hosted by a dozen private equity funds. They are legalizing the technology." They were back in the boatyard shed by 4 a.m. Cassian was waiting, the data from the laptop displayed on a massive screen. "Austin," Cassian said, his voice a low growl. "I can have $10 million in untraceable bonds there by sunrise. We buy the guest list. We buy the keynote speaker. We buy the entire hotel and everyone in it. Rhea shook her head, rubbing the grime from her face. No, money just makes them hide deeper. You cannot buy the truth. You have to drag it out into the sunlight. It is the only thing that kills this kind of mold. She moved to a massive whiteboard, the first flicker of command in her eyes. We cannot just fight the muscle. We have to map the disease. She began to draw, connecting boxes with sharp, angry lines. Sable Union provides the street-level violence. Axiom Halo gives them legitimate corporate access. Bayou Data Trust was the low-level surveillance, the ones who watched me. The Houston lab builds the hardware. She drew a circle at the very top, connecting all the lines to it, and all of it, every dollar, flows up and is laundered clean through one venture capital fund, Caldera 9. We need allies, she said, not just your soldiers. We need people who fight in the light. Who? Cashin asked. Maya Quintero. She runs the Unclaimed Freight podcast. She investigates corporate malfeasance, and she is afraid of no one. I am feeding her the data on Caldera 9 right now. Then, Owen. She nodded to the engineer, who looked up, startled. He builds the countermeasure. And Bishop. The hacker is already on my payroll, Cassian said. Good, Rhea replied. Tell him to stop drinking coffee and get into Caldera's servers. I want to know who they are selling to. The invitation from Frast came the next day. It was not a request. Agent Thorne, the man in charge, smiled a predatory smile from across a sterile conference table. Mr. Ray, a terrible situation. We are prepared to offer our full cooperation. He slid a heavy file across the table. Of course. To do so, we will require complete, transparent access to your entire financial infrastructure. A temporary asset custodianship, purely to ensure the investigation moves swiftly. Cassian's laugh was a sharp, cold bark. Temporary custodianship, Agent Thorne. You are not a cop. You are a vulture. You think I will let you strip my companies for parts. We are done. They stood. As they walked out, Rhea brushed past Thorne's junior agent, a young man trying to look important. She paused, then turned back, holding up a tiny, metallic disc between two fingers. Agent Thorne, she said, her voice clear and carrying. Your man dropped his cufflink. The junior agent's face went white. He instinctively patted his coat pocket. Rhea smiled, a humorless expression. No, not that one. The one he planted in my coat pocket. She dropped the tiny, sophisticated listening device onto the table, where it skittered across the polished wood. You will have to do better than that. Back in the safety of the boatyard, the mood was grim. They are not trying to solve the crime, Rhea said. They are trying to acquire the asset. They want the bomb tech for themselves. So what now? Cassian asked. We are boxed in by the criminals and the government. We set a trap, Rhea said, her eyes flashing. We bait the hook. We make the Clockwork Saints come to us. Owen Pike worked for 36 hours without sleep. He built a perfect replica of the Maybach seat. But this one, as he called it, was a liar. It was packed with sensors designed to feed false data back to its controller. Maya Quintero's podcast leaked a rumor that Ray, paranoid, was testing a new, unhackable vehicle. The trap was set in a secure garage. Cassian moved toward the driver's seat. Rhea put a hand on his chest, stopping him. No. It is my fight, Rhea. It is my expertise. The AI is looking for your posture, your weight, but it is also a machine. I am the only one who knows the signal. I am the only one who can hear the lie. Before he could argue, she was in the seat. She settled into the leather, forcing her body to mimic the posture she had studied on the camera feeds. She closed her eyes. For a full minute, there was only the hum of the garage lights, then a faint click from beneath the cushion. On Owen's monitor, a timer appeared. It started counting down. 45 seconds. We are live, Owen yelled. They took the bait. The server is active, Bishop. Are you in? I am in. Bishop's voice replied, tight with concentration. It is a server in Brussels. I am pulling their data now. Cashin's hands were clenched into white-knuckled fists. His eyes locked on Rhea. She did not look at the monitor. She kept her eyes closed, her breathing steady. Tuck, tuck, tuck. She listened to the tiny relays, the sound of the power surging through the circuits. "It is not the main capacitor," she whispered. "It is not the backup. It is in the fail-safe, the suicide lock." Tick, tick, tick. 30 seconds. Her hand moved, pulling a single wire clipper from her pocket. She did not rip open the seat. She reached underneath to the main control box and cut a single, seemingly unimportant green wire. Tick, tick, tick! The timer on the screen hit 25 seconds and froze. Then it and the entire connection vanished. Rhea opened her eyes, letting out a breath she had been holding for a lifetime. "The suicide lock," she said, her voice shaky but firm. "It is designed to self-destruct if the main system is compromised. I just told it the main system was fine. I disarmed the failsafe by arming it." Owen was cheering, but Bishop's voice cut through. "Got it, I got it all, the buyer list, the invoices. They have a meeting. Savannah, tomorrow night." Rhea stood up from the chair. Her legs buckled. Cassian was there in an instant, his hands on her arms, holding her steady. He did not speak. He just held her, his grip like steel, his eyes burning with a terrifying, raw awe. He was not looking at a consultant. He was looking at a miracle. The safe house was not a steel bunker. It was a dusty guest house apartment tucked into a steep gabled roof, overlooking the controlled chaos of Frenchman Street. Below, the city was just finding its voice. The first humid strains of jazz drifted up like heat from the pavement. Inside, there was only the sound of two people breathing, the adrenaline of the garage finally draining away, leaving a raw, aching exhaustion in its wake. Rhea sat on the edge of a worn sofa, the world blurring slightly at the edges. A sharp piece of the console she had ripped out had left a shallow, bleeding gash on her forearm. Cassian emerged from the small bathroom, a basic first aid kit in his hand. He knelt in front of her. The position was unnatural for him, a king on the floor, but he seemed unaware of it. He took her arm, his touch unexpectedly gentle. "This might sting, he said." He cleaned the scrape with an antiseptic wipe. His hands, the same hands that signed multi-billion-dollar deals and, she suspected, ordered men into the shadows, were not entirely steady. A fine, almost imperceptible tremor ran through his fingers as he worked. "Your hands are shaking," she said. It was a flat observation. "They are," he admitted, his voice low. He did not look up, his focus absolute as he applied a strip of gauze. He wrapped a sterile bandage around her arm, his thumb brushing the high, fast pulse at her wrist. The contact was different from the boatyard. That had been heat and rain. This was quiet and unnerving. "You know how to disarm a bomb," he stated, finally securing the bandage. "You know how to read a schematic that does not exist. What are you—" Rhea pulled her arm back slowly, flexing her fingers. She looked past him, through the window, to a sliver of the bruised purple sunset. "I was part of a program," she said, the words feeling foreign, tasting like rust, unofficial, non-existent. It was called Quiet Forge. We were technicians. We went where governments could not, to diffuse things they would not. No files, no serial numbers, no records. "You were a ghost," he said. "We were ghosts," she corrected, "until the mission changed." "Why did you leave?" She met his gaze, and for the first time, he saw the ice in her eyes flicker with a buried fire. "They started using us to plant things, to protect corporate assets by targeting civilian infrastructure, a power grid here, a water treatment plant there. I was trained to save lives, not to balance a spreadsheet by threatening them. So I did the only thing I was trained to do. I disappeared. I became a waitress. Ghosts are good at that." Cassian sat back on his heels, watching her. He had dealt with secrets his entire life. He was built to smell lies. He smelled none. He stood, not with his usual explosive energy, but with a deep weariness. He moved to the window. Looking down at the street, he considered his... "They call me a dawn," he said, his back to her. A criminal, a billionaire. They do not understand the difference or the necessity. He turned. When I was 22, my younger brother, Leo, took a summer job on the docks. He was smart. He was supposed to be the legitimate one. His jaw tightened. The Sable Union was trying to muscle in, prove a point. They set a charge on a container. It was sloppy. It was not meant for Leo. He was just there. He was collateral damage. He walked back toward her, the muscles in his neck cording. I built Rayworks, a legitimate empire, to protect this city, to own the infrastructure so that could never happen again. But to protect it, you have to fight in the shadows. You have to balance the violence. I became the thing I had to ensure no more Leos died on my watch. The air in the room was electric, thick with their confessions. They were two jagged, dangerous pieces, and the shape of their broken edges suddenly matched. She was the one who stood up. She moved to him, stopping so close she could feel the heat radiating from his chest, the faint scent of antiseptic, soap, and something uniquely him ozone and iron. "You are not a ghost, Rhea," he whispered, his voice rough. "No," she said, her own voice barely audible. "And you are not just a streetlight." She raised a hand, not to his scar this time, but to his face, her fingers tracing the hard line of his jaw. He was vibrating with a restrained, terrible energy. He lowered his head, and the kiss was not a collision. It was a surrender. It was slow, deliberate, a deep, drawn-out note like the saxophone that was still weeping on the street below. It was a conscious choice. His fingers found her hair, sinking into the dark strands, tilting her head. Her hands slid up his chest, gripping the fabric of his shirt. This was not the hurried, desperate kiss of the boatyard. This was a deep, aching exploration. He tasted of power and the faint, metallic tang of the fear he held for her. She tasted of coffee, gunpowder, and survival. His heavy coat, still damp, slid from his shoulders, pooling on the floor. Her worn diner cardigan followed. The room was warm, the light fading to a soft gold. He pulled back, his breath ragged, his eyes searching hers. He rested his forehead against hers. It was a question, asked in the absolute stillness of the space between them. "Are you sure?" Rhea did not answer with words. She slid one hand from his shirt, over his ribs, to the center of his chest, pressing her palm flat against his sternum. She felt his heart, a frantic, trapped bird. She took his hand and guided it to the same spot on her, letting him feel the proof of her own terror and her own decision. "I'm still here," she whispered. She pulled him closer. The thin curtain by the open window fluttered, a soft sigh as the evening breeze moved through the room. Later, they lay on the old sofa, the room dark, the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling. They were not touching, but the air between them was settled, changed. "I have one fear," Rhea said into the darkness. "My instructors at Quiet Forge, they taught us that in a critical situation, you have to make a choice, the device or the hostage. You cannot save both. My greatest fear is looking at a timer, knowing the person I care about is on the other side, and having to choose which wire to cut." Cassian was silent for a long moment. He turned his head on the cushion. "Then I will have to learn," he said, his voice soft but firm. "To stop sitting on bombs." The words hung in the air, a vow. It was broken by the harsh, blue pulse of a light, Cassian's phone, on the coffee table, a high encryption message. He sat up, the spell breaking. The dawn was back. He read the screen. "Bishop." Rhea was already sitting. "All business." "What?" "He is in. Caldera 9 is moving its assets. They are liquidating a massive crypto fund, funneling it through a hurricane relief fund. As clean cash, the final handoff is at a gala in Savannah, tomorrow night." "I am going alone," Rhea said, standing and pulling her shirt straight. "Absolutely not." He was on his feet, his voice a low growl. "You heard Bishop? This is the head of the snake. This is where the Clockwork Saints get their pay. It is a technical problem. Cassian, they are moving digital money in a secure environment. I need to be at the server, not at the bar. You are a target. You are noise. And you're the one they have an $8 million bounty on, he shot back. You walk in there. You do not walk out. I will not let you carry my sins. Rhea. This started with my car. This started long before you, she countered, her voice hard. He stepped in front of her, blocking her path, his frame filling the doorway. He took her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. We are in this. Together, that is the only way. Rhea looked at the intensity in his gaze, the raw fear beneath the anger. He was right. She was no longer a ghost. She was a target. And he was no longer just a client. He was a vulnerability. Then we have rules, she said, her voice like steel. No more lies, no more hidden agendas. You do not run off to meet traitors, and I do not hide my intel. She poked a finger at his chest, then at hers. We do not use this to manipulate the mission. Tactical decisions are tactical. Agreed. He nodded, his expression grim. Agreed. He did not kiss her again. He just held her gaze, a silent, binding contract. Good, Rhea said, stepping back. Now, tell me everything you know about Savannah. The Gala for Innovations in Traffic Safety was held at the Savannah Railroad Museum, a cathedral of iron and steel, where historic locomotives gleamed under spotlights. It was the perfect metaphor, old money and new tech running on the same track. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and virtue signaling. Politicians clinked champagne glasses with venture capitalists, while social media influencers took selfies with a glossy, futuristic chassis, captioning the photos with hashtags about saving lives. Rhea Navarro, draped in a simple, elegant emerald green gown, looked nothing like a waitress. Her hair was swept up, the titanium bobby pin now a deliberate, chic accessory. She projected the quiet confidence of old money, a philanthropist from a non-existent Afro-Latina foundation. Beside her, Cassian Ray played his part to perfection, the bored, ostentatious donor. He wore his suit like armor, a slight, dismissive smile on his lips, a man unimpressed by anything that cost less than 10 figures. They found it near the main pavilion, the Executive Safety Module, version 2. A presenter chirped to a crowd. It was a single, sleek driver's seat on a polished chrome pedestal. It is not just anti-theft, the presenter announced. It is anti-compromise. Cassian leaned in, playing the interested buyer. Impressive. How does it deter unauthorized users? A simple, proprietary deterrent system. Mr. Ray. If the seat detects a non-authorized biometric signature, it ensures the asset goes nowhere. Rhea moved closer, her eyes scanning the base of the pedestal. She feigned a stumble, her hand bracing against the display. Her fingers brushed the underside of a small, decorative Allen screw. It was not smooth, etched into the metal, so small it was almost invisible. Was the stylized hawk of the Clockwork Saints. A backgate, she murmured, straightening up, her expression unbothered. It is not an anti-theft device. It is a ransom note. Across the museum, Maya Quintero, looking like an over-eager journalist, held her phone up, supposedly recording a selfie video. In reality, her microphone was aimed at the CEO of Caldera 9, who was holding court in a private lounge. The beauty of this technology, the CEO slurred, champagne making him loose-lipped, is the scalability. We already have a major law enforcement client. The Urban Security and Homing Directorate is looking to outfit their entire high-priority fleet. A new, fictional agency, built to be a shadow. In the museum's damp, humming technical room, Owen Pike, wearing a borrowed caterer's jacket, jammed a flash drive into the main power inverter. He was not stealing power. He was stealing data. I am in Bishop, he whispered into a lapel mic. The firmware for the entire building's display network is here. It is... Oh, God, it is a central control command. They can control every seat from one terminal. The main hall's polished doors burst open, shattering the polite hum. Agent Thorne from Frast strode in, flanked by 6 armed agents in blue windbreakers. The influencers turned, their cameras finding a new, more exciting target. "Cassian Ray," Thorne boomed, his voice dripping with false righteousness. "You are under arrest for the good of the public. Your assets are being seized pending investigation." A gasp went through the crowd. Cassian merely raised an eyebrow. "On what charge?" "Agent appreciating antique locomotives." "We have reason to believe you are obstructing a federal investigation." "Are you sure about that?" Rhea's voice cut through the air, clear and cold. She was holding her own phone up, not at Thorne, but at the large projection screen above the main locomotive. "Or do you have reason to believe your stock options are in jeopardy?" Thorne's face paled. On the giant screen, the image of the futuristic car chassis dissolved. It was replaced by a crystal-clear screenshot of a brokerage account. It showed a transfer of 10,000 shares of Caldera 9 stock options, gifted to a private trust, a trust registered in Agent Thorne's wife's name. "That evidence," Rhea announced, her voice resonating through the silent hall, "is currently being live-streamed, courtesy of Bishop, to every major news outlet on the East Coast, as well as to the Attorney General." Thorne's smile vanished, his face contorted with rage. He lunged, not for Cassian, but for Rhea. The world went dark. It was not a simple power cut. It was a localized electromagnetic pulse. Every light, every phone, every camera, every microphone in the museum died instantly, plunged into an oppressive, silent blackness. The only sound was the collective, terrified gasp of the crowd. In the chaos, Rhea did not hesitate. She grabbed Cassian's hand, her grip like a vice. "This way now." She pulled him not toward the exit, but toward the massive, dark shape of the nearest train. She knew what an EMP meant. It was cover, not just for an escape, but for an attack. A single, sharp ping echoed through the dark, the sound of a high-velocity round striking the steel hull of the train, exactly where Cassian had been standing 1 second before. "Sniper," Cassian hissed. "Digital scope," Rhea grunted, pulling him along the side of the train car. "The EMP scrambled his optics. He's firing blind. We have to move." They reached the end of the car and climbed the iron ladder to the open-air observation deck. The rain had started. A cold savanna drizzle that slicked the wooden planks. They were exposed. "We have to jump to the next car," Rhea said, gauging the distance. "On 3. "Rhea." She turned. Cassian had slipped on the wet wood, his expensive leather-soled shoes finding no purchase. He was falling, his body tipping backward off the edge of the train car toward the hard ground 10 feet below. Rhea lunged. She caught him, not by his hand, but by the lapel of his suit, the fabric strained. She grabbed his wrist, her fingers digging into his skin, her arm screaming from the sudden, dead weight. He hung there for a dreadful second, his feet dangling. He looked up at her, his eyes wide in the gloom. All the power, all the control of the dawn stripped away, leaving only the man. He was breathing hard, his fingers desperately clawing at her hand, trying to get a grip. "I am more afraid of losing you than losing everything." He gasped, the words ripped out of him. "Do not be dramatic," she gritted, her teeth clenched. "Climb." With a roar, he used her grip for leverage, swinging his other arm up. Finding the railing, he hauled himself over, collapsing onto the deck, pulling her down with him. They landed in a heap of emerald fabric and expensive wool, breathing raggedly, the rain washing the sweat from their faces. They did not speak. They ran. They jumped the gap, scrambled down the other side, and melted into the panicking, fleeing crowd, disappearing out a side maintenance exit. They were in a rented sedan and halfway back to New Orleans before either of them spoke. The car was silent, the high-tech engine a whisper. "They have the firmware," Owen said from the back seat, his voice shaky. "We have the Frast connection." Cassian stared out the window, his knuckles white on the dashboard. He was replaying the moment, the fall, the look in her eyes as she held him. Rhea drove, her gaze fixed on the dark, wet highway. They had the evidence. Caldera would bleed. Frast would be investigated. But the Clockwork Saints, the ones who built the bombs, the ones who pulled the trigger, their true faces were still in the shadows, and they had just declared open war. The blowback from Savannah was immediate and brutal. Axiom Halo, bleeding investors and facing a federal inquiry, did not bother with subtlety. The message, disseminated through the darkest channels of the criminal web, was simple $8 million in crypto for the head of the woman known as the Bayou Angel. The name, once a flicker of viral curiosity, was now a death warrant. The second blow was physical. Rhea returned to the Bayou Star Diner on instinct, a need to see the one place she had felt invisible. It was destroyed, not burned, not looted, but meticulously dismantled. The jukebox was silent, its glass shattered. The Formica counters were split with axes, the vinyl booths slashed to the yellow foam. Sal, the cook, was physically unharmed, but he was sitting on the curb, his face pale. They had left him tied up in the kitchen as a warning. The message was clear: there was no part of her old life left to return to. Cassian moved them. He abandoned the boatyard, the penthouse, and the guest house. He took Rhea to a place she did not know. He had a concrete and steel safe room, 20 feet beneath a nondescript warehouse in the Garden District. It was sterile, soundproof, and suffocating. "I am calling the Institute," he announced, his voice flat, devoid of the warmth from Frenchman Street. "They will move you tonight. Zurich, Cape Town, a new identity, a new life. This is over." Rhea stood in the center of the gray room, the recycled air chilling her skin. "No, this is not a negotiation," he said, turning on her, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "That is an $8 million bounty. These are not amateurs. They will not stop until you are dead." "And disappearing stops them," she shot back, her own voice rising. "You put me in a box, Cassian, and you hand them the win. They keep the technology. They control the city. They win in the dark, while I am sipping coffee in Switzerland, pretending to be someone else. I am not running." "I am protecting you," he roared. "You are hiding me," she corrected, her eyes like ice. "It is not the same thing. If we disappear, we lose." The argument was cut short by a secure line. Bishop's voice, filtered through an encrypted speaker, was tight with panic. "We have a new problem, a big one. Sable Union is not running, they are merging. They have partnered with Syndicate Solace, a crypto laundering network out of Eastern Europe. They are accelerating the plan. They are activating a dozen seats, high-profile targets, all up the eastern seaboard. They are going to trigger a mass panic in the executive insurance market." Cassian's face went white. "They are going to crash the market and buy it for pennies." Rhea finished, the true, terrifying scope of the plan finally settling on them. The pressure changed Cassian. He reverted, the partner she had known. The man who had confessed his fears disappeared. In his place was the Don. He began holding meetings with his inner circle, his consigliere from the Gray-White Institute, his head of security, meetings that Rhea was pointedly excluded from. He was moving pieces on a board she was no longer allowed to see. She knew he was breaking their pact. The promise of no lies, no hidden agendas, evaporated under the heat of real war. She did not need Bishop to tell her. She could see it in the way he avoided her eyes, in the sudden, cold formality. She confronted him in the bunker's small study, where he was reviewing encrypted manifests. "You are meeting him." He did not look up. "It is internal business. It does not concern you." "It does not concern me." Her voice was dangerously low. "Does internal business include a private meeting with the new capo of the Sable Union? You are walking into a meet, alone, thinking you can cut a deal, thinking you can find the mole." He went utterly still. He looked up, his eyes cold. "How did you know?" "I still know how to listen," she said, her body vibrating with a sudden, cold fury. "You are breaking the one rule we had." He stood up, his chair scraping loudly on the concrete floor. "I am ending this. I will give them what they want, find the traitor in my organization, and end this threat to you. By trusting the people who put a bomb in your car, I am the Dawn Rhea. This is how I operate." She stared at him, the man who had trembled when he held her, now hiding behind a wall of arrogance and fear. She reached up, her hand shaking, and pulled the titanium bobby pin from her hair. She did not hand it to him. She threw it. It clattered on the steel desk between them, a tiny metallic sound in the crushing silence. "There," she said, her voice breaking with the betrayal. "There is your 19-second solution. You want to play solo. Cassian, fine. Go play, but stop asking me to keep you alive. I am done." She turned to walk away, the space between them feeling vast and unbridgeable. "I did it to protect you." His voice was a raw shout, the sound of the man on the train, the man who had been falling. "If you are in the room, you are the target. If they know you are my weakness, they will aim for you, not me. I will not have your death on my conscience." Rhea spun back, her eyes blazing, tears of rage blurring her vision, and pushing me away, pushing me into the dark, blind and deaf while you walk into their trap. That is not protecting me. That is making me a hostage. That is putting me directly in the crosshairs. "Your fear," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "is going to get us both killed." The silence that followed was absolute, heavier than the concrete walls, the trust, the intimacy, the entire fragile structure they had built, had just collapsed. Before either of them could speak, two things happened at once. Her burner phone, the one Bishop had given her, buzzed. A text from an unknown, encrypted number. The countdown has started again under his seat. This time, there are no wires to cut. At the exact same moment, Cassian's own encrypted phone lit up, an invitation. "A gesture of peace," he read, his face ashen. "Let us resolve the misunderstanding." "Where?" Rhea asked, the soldier snapping back into place. "The center of the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway, sunset." "A pincer, a trap." "They are separating us," Rhea said, her mind racing. "They send me the threat to make me panic, to make me search the car and keep me here. They send you the invitation to lure you out onto the water." "It is an execution," Cassian said. "I'm not going." "Yes, you are," Rhea said. She picked the bobby pin off the desk, her hand steady once more, and slid it back into her hair. "They want a target, we will give them one. They want to set a trap, we will set a better one." She looked at him, the anger gone, replaced by the cold, hard reality of the mission. They are right about one thing. This is not about the car anymore. It is about the man. To catch them. We need bait. We need someone to be the sacrifice. She paused. "We need someone to sit in the chair." The Lake Pontchartrain Causeway was the perfect execution site. 24 miles of concrete cutting through the dark water, with no cover and no escape. The setting sun bled across the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and blood orange. The black Maybach gleamed, a dark mirror reflecting the sky. It was Cassian's car, but its heart was a lie. Owen Pike had worked for 12 straight hours, replacing the driver's seat with his own creation. It was a perfect physical match, down to the last stitch of hand-tooled leather. But beneath the surface, it was a data trap, a network of false sensors designed to feed the Clockwork Saints server exactly what it wanted to see, while routing the real command signals straight back to Bishop. "The satellite hub is live," Bishop's voice crackled in Rhea's ear, a tiny, skin-toned receiver. "I'm spoofing the Brussels server. I am now their cathedral. Any signal they send, I get it first." Miles away, in a rental van parked at the edge of the causeway, Maya Quintero checked her levels. Her anonymous podcast was live, streaming audio from a high-gain directional microphone aimed at the center of the bridge. "We are recording," she whispered. "The world is listening, even if they do not know it yet." In the Maybach, the air was thick. Cassian reached for the door handle. "I am sitting in the chair," he stated. It was the flat, final tone of the dawn. Rhea's hand shot out, grabbing his arm, not a plea, but a grip of steel. "No." "We agreed. This is my war, my risk." "You are a target, Cassian. You are not bait," she said, her voice low and fierce. "Bait has to know the trap. You are blind. I am not. I will not let you die for me. She stepped in front of him, blocking him, forcing him to look at her. The setting sun lit her face, her eyes burning with a desperate, cold fire. She raised her hands, framing his face, her thumbs brushing the hard line of his jaw. The intimacy was a shock after the coldness of the bunker. "You promised me," she whispered, her voice rough. "You promised you would learn to stop sitting on bombs. If you sit in that chair, if you die, the promise you made to me dies too. Your word dies. I will not let you break it." He stared at her, the mask of the dawn cracking, his eyes revealing the man she had held on the rain-slicked train, the man who was terrified. Before he could argue, she moved. She shrugged off her own jacket and pulled his large, heavy suit coat from the back seat. She slid her arms into it. The sleeves were too long, the shoulders too broad, but it smelled of him iron and ozone and that faint, expensive scent. "The AI is not looking for you," she said, buttoning the coat. "It is looking for your shape. This jacket will confuse the posture sensors. It will buy me the time I need." She got into the driver's seat. She closed her eyes for just 1 second, her hand resting over her own heart, feeling its steady, practiced beat. She was calm. She was a woman in a workshop, her fingers on the wires. She opened her eyes and looked at him. "Get to cover and trust me to do my job." He did not move. "Go," she commanded. He backed away, his face a mask of agony, and disappeared behind the concrete support of the bridge. Rhea settled into the seat. She took a slow, deep breath, 4 counts in, 7 counts hold, 8 counts out. The car was silent. There was only the sound of the wind whipping across the lake. Then, from the dashboard, the heads-up display flickered to life, a virtual projection, glowing red on the windshield. A timer appeared, 59 seconds. Tuk-tuk-tuk. Rhea's skin went cold. Sweat pricked her hairline, but her hands, resting on the steering wheel, were rock steady. "Bishop, I am live," she said, her voice even. "They are in—" "I see it, Rhea. They are activating the main charge. Stand by." A convoy of black sedans approached from the north end of the bridge. Stopping 100 yards away, a man got out of the lead car. He was tall, dressed in an immaculate gray suit, and he walked with an air of academic arrogance. He stopped just outside the range of Maya's microphones. "Armand Vale," Cashin's voice muttered in her ear. From his own receiver. "Ex-defense engineer, dishonorably discharged for selling targeting algorithms. He is the Clockwork Saints." Armand smiled, as if addressing a crowd. He spoke, and his voice, amplified, echoed from a speaker on his car. "A demonstration, Mr. Ray, of the true art of modern commerce. Fear is not a bug. It is a feature. And it is so very, very profitable." Tick, tick, tick. 40 seconds. The sound of sirens wailed from both ends of the causeway. Frast, Thorne's men. They screeched to a halt, forming a chaotic blockade, their blue and red lights painting the scene in a strobe of panic. "Multiple units," Cashin hissed. "They are not unified. They are arguing." A third faction, a black van, no markings. Men in tactical gear emerged, weapons raised. They did not move toward Armand. They did not move toward the Maybach. They formed a firing line. "It is a cleanup crew," Rhea said. "They are here to kill everyone Thorne's private army." "Bishop now," Cassian roared. "Engaging." Bishop's voice was tight. "I am rerouting the detonation signal. 3, 2... "Rhea, get out!" Cassian yelled, breaking cover. The Frast team opened fire. Cassian grabbed the Maybach's door. Yanking it open, he seized Rhea by the front of his own jacket, pulling her bodily from the seat as she simultaneously hit a command on her watch. "One," Bishop yelled. Rhea hit the concrete. At the same instant, 2 things happened. A muffled pop came from Armand Vale's lead car. Not an explosion, a wet, percussive thud. A massive cloud of neon green powder erupted from the driver's seat, enveloping Armand in a cloud of humiliation. Owen's paint bomb replacement had worked. But Armand Vale was not looking at his car. He was laughing. a high, unhinged shriek that cut through the sirens. "Fools!" he screamed, wiping the green dust from his face. "Did you think I had only one circuit? Did you think I would not have a contingency for my own masterpiece?" He held up a small, black detonator. "Plan C, Mr. Ray, the wireless failsafe. No timers, no pressure plates, just biology." His eyes gleamed with a terrifying, zealous light. "Nanoparticles, woven into the foam of your seat, heat activated. They are on your coat right now. They are keyed to your heartbeat the second your pulse goes over 110. From stress, from fear. It completes the circuit. Every gun, every eye, every light turned, not to Rhea, to Cassian. He was the target, and the bomb was on her. A cold, dawning horror settled over Rhea. Armand was monologuing, but his eyes were on Cassian. He had aimed the threat at the dawn, but the weapon was on her. The nanoparticles, activated from the foam Cassian had briefly touched, were now clinging to the fibers of the coat she was wearing. It was the perfect trap. The $8 million bounty was not for a bullet. It was for this. To kill her with Cassian's own fear. A new sound began. Not a tick-tick-tuck from a device, but a faint, high-frequency whine, vibrating from the lapel of the coat, right over her heart. A tiny LED, the size of a pinprick, began to pulse. Red. Her tactical watch, synced to Bishop, flashed. Her heart rate was 98 beats per minute, and climbing. "He is not wrong, Rhea," Armand yelled, his voice giddy with triumph as the Frass team advanced, weapons raised. 110, that is all it takes. Your own fear is the trigger. She was the bomb. The logic hit her instantly, a deadly paradox. If she ran, if she fought, if she showed any fear, her pulse would spike. Detonation if she stood still. The Frass team would shoot her. Detonation if she was separated from Cassian, her panic would be isolated, singular, and easy for the device to read. But what if the signal was not singular? The algorithm was looking for one, panicked heart. What if it found two, beating as one? She did not run away, she ran to him. Cassian saw her coming, his face a mask of pale terror. "Rhea, no, the coat, get it off!" He was already reaching for her, trying to rip the poisoned garment from her body. "No!" she yelled, slamming into his chest. She grabbed the front of his shirt, pulling him down to her. "It is looking for my heart. It is not looking for ours. Breathe with me. Now." He stared at her, uncomprehending, his mind paralyzed by the impossible choice. She did not have time to explain. She seized his face with both hands, yanked him down, and kissed him. It was not a kiss of love or passion. It was an act of pure, desperate survival. It was a violation, a tactical assault. Her lips were hard, demanding, forcing his... It was a desperate attempt to synchronize two rhythms, to force his breath to match hers, to make two heartbeats into a single, unreadable signal. His shock was a tangible thing, his body rigid. Then he understood. His arms, which had been trying to push her away, clamped around her, pulling her so tight against his body she could feel the hard plates of the soft armor under his shirt. He kissed her back, his entire being focusing on her, matching her rhythm, pouring all his strength, all his control into this one, desperate act of union. The sirens, the shouting, the wind, it all faded to a dull roar. There was only the sound of their breathing, ragged and harsh, in the space between their mouths. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers digging into his back. Their eyes squeezed shut. She was simultaneously searching the coat with one hand, feeling for the node, the central cluster of the nanoparticles. "If I have to die," he whispered, his breath hot against her lips, his voice raw, "I die in your arms." "Do not be unlucky," she breathed back, a tear of pure adrenaline cutting a path through the grime on her cheek. "Count with me." She broke the kiss, but kept her forehead pressed hard against his. Their eyes locked. 4, she commanded. They inhaled. 7. They held. 8. They exhaled. A single, shuddering gust. Her watch flashed. 105. Again. 4. Inhale. 7. Hold. 8. Exhale. Her pulse steadied. 90. 80. The algorithm, searching for a frantic singular spike, found a steady, dual rhythm it could not parse. The red light on her lapel flickered. Confused, it shifted to amber. It was searching for a new pattern. "It is delayed," she yelled. 20 seconds. "Owen, now!" Bishop's voice screamed in her ear. Owen Pike burst from behind the rental van, not with a weapon, but with a fire extinguisher. He sprayed the front of her coat, not with foam, but with a dense cloud of fine, gray dust, boron powder, an insulator. "Bishop, infrared," Owen yelled. From the van, a high-intensity infrared lamp clicked on, illuminating Rhea's coat. The boron was inert, but the nanoparticle cluster, now superheating in its confusion, glowed bright purple under the light. "There!" Rhea slammed her hand on the spot. She ripped her titanium bobby pin from her hair, jammed it into the fabric, and cut a 2-inch square of the coat away, the glowing patch falling to the concrete. She kicked it into a metal thermos of saturated saline solution Owen had thrown at her feet. The liquid hissed. The light died. Armand Vale shrieked. It was a sound of pure, primal failure. His art was gone. He raised a pistol and fired. 1, 2, 3 shots. Cassian did not flinch. He spun, putting his body between Rhea and the gun. His arms locked around her. The bullets slammed into his back, their impact a series of heavy, dull thuds against his vest. He grunted, the air forced from his lungs, but he did not fall. "Maya, you live!" Rhea yelled from within his arms. "I am live," Maya's voice cried out. Her feed, now back online, was capturing the entire scene, Armand firing on an unarmed woman, Cassian shielding her, and the Frast cleanup team, their earpieces now active, taking orders from an unknown source to contain all assets. The audio was streaming worldwide. Public opinion was not just shifting, it was exploding. The standoff was broken. Rhea pushed away from Cassian, while Armand stared, dumbfounded, at the man who should be dead. Rhea moved. She crossed the 20 feet in 3 strides. She did not punch him. She hooked her arm around his neck in a perfect chokehold, spinning him around, using his own body as a shield against the Frast team. She shoved him against the Maybach and, with movements that were brutally efficient, ripped a still-attached seatbelt from the ruined car and zip-tied his hands behind his back. The Sable Union convoy, seeing their asset compromised and their operation exposed, hit their gas. Their tires smoked as they reversed, disappearing back into the causeway. The Frast team, their orders now a liability, lowered their weapons, caught in the headlights of approaching official New Orleans police cars. Rhea leaned in close to Armand's ear, her voice a serrated whisper. "Your art," she hissed, "is just weaponized laziness." She stepped back, her body shaking from the violent adrenaline crash. The causeway was a chaotic mess of sirens, shouting and flashing lights in the center of it all. Cassian stood, watching her. He walked to her, his steps unsteady. He reached out, his hand visibly shaking, and touched her cheek. He was alive. She was alive. He pulled her in, and this time, the kiss was not a tactic. It was not a fight. It was a long, shuddering, desperate confirmation. It was the taste of gunpowder and salt and the impossible, undeniable fact of their survival. It was unsteady, but it was absolute. The fallout was not a storm. It was a slow, seismic shift, the kind that changes coastlines. Maya Quintero's podcast, broadcasting the audio of the Causeway standoff and Bishop's data dump, was the most listened-to piece of journalism in the country. It was no longer called unclaimed freight. It was now simply the list. Frast did not survive the exposure. Congress, forced into action by the sheer weight of public outrage, convened an emergency hearing. Agent Thorne's private army was exposed, and he, along with 12 other agents, was indicted on charges of racketeering and conspiracy. The Urban Security and Homing Directorate, the fictional agency Caldera 9 had been selling to, vanished from government databases. Caldera 9 itself had its assets frozen by a regional district attorney who, ignoring the federal mess, had formed a new, temporary commission on private sector violence. Axiom Halo announced a corporate restructuring, its stock flatlining, its executives disappearing. Armand Vail, facing state charges, was denied bail, the Clockwork Saints, their leader unmasked and their infrastructure exposed, scattered. Cassian Ray, true to his word, began to change. He held a press conference, not as a Don, but as the CEO of Rayworks. He announced he was dismantling 50% of his shadow assets, the private security and logistics networks that had kept his empire safe through force. The remaining half was reorganized, its entire operational budget transferred to a new, public-facing endowment, the Leo Ray Fund for Victims of Technological Abuse. The Bayou Star Diner reopened 3 weeks later. The counters were new, the booths were reupholstered, but the coffee pot was the same. Cassian had funded the entire rebuild anonymously. It was still a diner, but it was also something more. Sal was back at the grill, but the back room was now the headquarters for the Quiet Wave initiative. Rhea had been offered the role of Chief of Global Security at Rayworks. The 7-figure salary, the power, the access, it was hers. She turned it all down. Instead, she ran the Quiet Wave. It was a community outreach program, a training center for the city's night shift. She taught rideshare drivers, waitresses, and overnight security guards urban survival skills, how to spot a surveillance device, how to read a corporate terms of service for data loopholes, and, in a class that was always full, how to use the 4-7-8 breathing technique to control a panic response. Bishop sent one final, encrypted message from a secure IP address. It was just a picture of a really, really good cup of coffee from a shop in Bogota. Then he was gone. That night, they found themselves in the guest house above Frenchman Street. The adrenaline was gone, leaving a silence that was heavier than any bomb. The rain, which had defined their beginning, was soft tonight, a gentle tapping on the roof. Rhea stood by the open window, her arms crossed, watching the curtains flutter. He stood behind her, not touching, just watching. "I'm sorry," he said. She turned. For what? The bunker, the lies, for being afraid. For all of it. We survived. Cassian, that is all that matters. No, he said, stepping closer. It is not what we said in that bunker. She put a finger to his lips, stopping him. You do not have to save anyone tonight, and she whispered, the fight is over. He looked at her, truly seeing the exhaustion she held at bay. He did not reach for her. He did not try to kiss her. He simply took her left hand, the one that had cut the wires. He saw the new raw scrape from the console, and beneath it the faint, silvery lines of old scars from Quiet Forge. He traced one of the old scars with his thumb, a map of a life she had survived. He bent his head, his lips brushing the inside of her wrist. It was not a kiss of passion. It was a gesture of absolute reverence. He whispered one word against her skin. Thank you. A single, hot tear, the one she had not allowed herself on the bridge, slid down her cheek. She took his hand and pressed it flat against her sternum, holding it there, letting him feel her heart. It was slow, steady, safe. She slid her other hand up his chest, feeling his own heart, just as steady. She pulled him closer until their foreheads touched, until their breath mingled. They stood there, anchored, their heartbeats, once frantic and tactical, finding a new, shared rhythm. The only sound was the soft rain. On the new counter of the Bayou Star Diner, in a small glass box, sat a single, titanium bobby pin. Rhea called it her reminder to forget, a symbol that she was choosing connection over control. The diner was dark, closed for the night. The neon sign outside cast a faint blue glow. Cassian and Rhea sat in the stillness. They were not in a booth. They were sitting on a new, fully installed, state-of-the-art driver's seat. It was the first model built by Owen Pike under the new Secure Seat Act standards. Cassian shifted, testing the leather. "It is comfortable," he said, a small smile playing on his lips. "I'm still sitting on a seat." He turned to her, his eyes serious in the half-light. "But this time," he said, his voice soft, "my heart is in your hand." Rhea looked at him, the waitress and the dawn, the ghost and the king. She smiled. "Do not drop it." Outside, on the street, a siren wailed, but it was distant, fading away into the city. Inside the diner, the neon clock on the wall, the one that had been stuck on 2:19, suddenly clicked. The digital numbers flipped. It read 0000, the beginning. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are tuning in from. Let us know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please make sure to subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Story, and like this video if you want more stories like this to be heard by more people. Please support us by hitting that hype button.